Hello, you guys. It's Robin Norgren. I'm back with another book study from the Mysticism series, Richard Rohr's Eager to Love. So if you have your book and you've started reading it along with me, then we, I believe, are on page number 13. And if you're new to this book club, I will make sure and put the links down in the show notes so that you can go back to the beginning and catch up with us. But even if you don't start from the very beginning, I think you will find a lot of valuable information just from sitting and listening in on the study. So I appreciate you coming by. Really, it's a discussion about how mysticism shows up in the church. My experience has been that in a lot of church circles, mysticism is put up against rational thinking and almost becomes this taboo that if you really follow God, that those things that are more supernatural were for another time and another place. Same thing with grace, that grace is more of an abstract thing rather than something you can really have a state of being and a way in which you move around in the world and the way in which you engage others. That as you see is how you are seen. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. And we're still in the chapter called What Do We Mean by Mysticism? My God and All Things. Finally, any temptation to either elitism or individualism is strongly overcome in Franciscan mysticism by its adamant insistence on identification with the cross, solidarity with the poor, and with human suffering in general. Solidarity with the suffering of the world and even with the suffering of God is Francis's starting point and not any kind of search for perfect moral perfection. This keeps the contemplative journey from mere introspection, sweet piety, private salvation, or any antisocial or privatized message whereby I imagine that I can come to God by myself, apart from union with everything else. The Franciscan motto is thus, my God and all things. Francis had to be so adamant about the poor and poverty because he knew that spirituality in itself and apart from others, without service and concrete love, often leads people to immense ego inflation and delusion. Wanting to be thought holy, special, right, safe, or on higher moral ground has a deep narcissistic appeal to the human ego. These false motivations are, ironically, the surest way to actually avoid God, all the while using much God talk and ritualized behavior. The great irony of faith is that authentic God experience does indeed make you know you are quite special, favorite, and chosen, but you realize that others are too. That is the giveaway that your experience is authentic, although it might take a while to get there. You are indeed hurting, and others are too. Your only greatness is that you share the common greatness of the whole communion of saints. Your membership in the communion of sinners is a burden you can now carry patiently because others are also carrying it with you. You are finally inside of what Thomas Merton calls the general dance. You no longer need to be personally correct as much as you need to be personally connected. I want you to think about that. That anytime you want to have your own private walk with God, which that is something that a lot of people ascribe to in the American church, that you really aren't genuine understanding the point of grace, of community, of connectedness. So if you're working through this book with your own group, I'd like to invite you to have that conversation together. What it looks like in your church, what it looks like in your own life. Has it been something that has been a priority? And does your collective also view it as a priority? So Franciscan mysticism is indeed mysticism, but is especially poised and prepared to lead people not just to inner experience, but to the possibility of daily and regular experience in the depth and beauty of the ordinary, especially because it incorporates a seeming negative and moves our life to its hard edges, thus making things like failure, tragedy, and suffering the quickest doorways to the encounters of God. All can now enter if they are honest about their poverty. There is nothing that God cannot and will not use to bring us to divine union, even sin. That is the full glory, effectiveness, and universality of the gospel in its simple and clear splendor. In short, Francis democratizes the whole spiritual journey and lets us know that it is available outside of monastery celibacy, moralism, and false asceticism, which has not always been obvious in most Christian and non-Christian spiritualities. This is surely why G.K. Chesterton called Francis the world's one quite sincere Democrat. If Christ is the first idea in the mind of God, if the Christ mystery is revealed already in the Bing Bang, then grace is inherent to creation from the beginning, and not a later add-on, or a dole-out to the worthy or the churched, or the prize for the perfect. This completely rearranges the spiritual universe most of us were educated into, where grace was an add-on, an occasional filling of the gaps, a churchy thing, a prize for the perfect, and even then, only now and then. So I'd like to stop right there, because I feel like that's another big conversation to have. That what has grace meant to you? How was it introduced to you? And in what way do you find that you might be hesitating to really embrace what grace means? I hope you're enjoying this study. I will be back tomorrow so we can discuss more. We're going to take our time through this because grace is such a pivotal part of what it means to love God and to love others, that until we have this understanding, which is also always evolving, we really can't understand how much God is for us, but also for others. All right, thanks so much for stopping by.